What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So this past weekend, Wicked and Gladiator II, or as me and the internet like to call it, Glicked, has dropped in theaters. I've had a chance to see both films, and I'm ready to give my spoiler-free thoughts on both. But first, if y'all don't mind leaving a like, comment, subscribing, and sharing this video, it would help YouTubers like myself, especially ones that are trying to get into the entertainment industry side of YouTube that is already very heavily populated. If you could just do that, I would really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get started talking about Wicked. And right off the bat, I saw this movie this past Saturday with my mom. I didn't, going into it, know a lot about Wicked the play, Wicked the book, anything of that nature. I went in as somebody who grew up watching The Wizard of Oz and thoroughly enjoying it, and I gotta say it was a very delightfully charming entry in the Wizard of Oz franchise. I'm still not sure if it's meant to be. I've heard some people call it a prequel and other people have called it a alternate reality sort of retelling of The Wizard of Oz. Whatever it is though, I think it absolutely works. I really take it to be a prequel, and really it's just an incredible introduction, I think, to people who maybe haven't seen The Wizard of Oz, as well as really just standing on its own. The cast from Ariana Grande to Cynthia Erivo, I hope I'm saying that name right, their performances as Glinda and the Wicked Witch, or Elphaba as she's called in this film respectively, they all just give really amazing performances. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo in particular, they just play off each other so well, have such great on-screen chemistry where they're really like the antithesis of one another, which, like, if you know the play or you've seen the movie already, you know that's already the chemistry of those two, but like they're just the complete 180 of each other while complementing the other's personalities and traits and all that very, very well. Michelle Yeoh does a wonderful job in her role. So does Jeff Goldblum as Oz. He doesn't appear until like the third act of the film, but when he is there, he's great. And together they honestly give some of the year's best and, quite frankly, in my opinion, some of the most iconic performances. The sets, the costume design, everything. I don't know how it pertains as opposed to like the Wicked Broadway show, but I'd imagine it's pretty close to it. But the sets and costumes and all that in this movie, I thought were absolutely fantastic for sure. And again, they complemented one another very well. The mixture of the pink and the green imagery, I just really enjoyed it. The visuals, this might be the most visually impressive film, or visually impressive film, I mean, of 2024. I mean, it's really close with Dune Part 2, but this might actually have it beat. I really think this year it could win Oscars for the best visual effects. Like, I really do. It was just an outstanding achievement. The way that they built the Oz train that you see as they're taking the trip to Emerald City, and apparently it was like built, like, it's not CGI, it was like an actual train, and they modified it to look like that. So again, just really great visuals, really great practical effects. So when they do use CGI, very rarely does it actually look bad. And going on to the themes of this movie, you know I'm a themes guy. You know I love it when stories tackle deep and prevalent themes. And there's so many themes to explore here, from the idea of political oppression. There's this like sub-story element, whatever you want to call it, with these animals that, you know, because animals could talk back in these early days of Oz or whatever, but then when Oz gets in power, he's saying we need to take away these animals' ability to speak. So it really deals with a lot of political oppression, politicians that tend to like hide under a facade of being so powerful when really at the end of the day they're just human and they're really just cowards and afraid. Of course, you can't really touch on this without going on to mention that this film really touches on the topic of racism. I mean, nobody likes Elphaba because of her. I'm sure I'm saying the name wrong, and I apologize, Wicked fans, but I'm going to go with Elphaba for the rest of this review. So Elphaba, you know, her green skin, like, she's being very, I guess you could say, she's definitely the outcast because of that, which again is a prevalent theme toward racism. But they handle all of these themes in a way that, you know, really could be divisive or considered woke, whatever anyone wants to call it to some, but they do it in a way here, and I'm sure it's the same way in the book and play as well, to where it's not preachy, it's not heavy-handed, but it's just there to serve as a deeper theme for the story. Moving on, there's definitely so many winks and nods to the Wizard of Oz original movie. And again, they're not heavy-handed, they're not like overtly in your face. Like, there's one scene involving a bicycle and a like basket or whatever, and you know, you're gonna know instantaneously like what that's referencing, but they just do it in a fun and clever way that's not like, you remember that, like trying to be like right in your face about it, that I really appreciated. Some of the musical numbers do go on a little bit too long, and again, I'm judging this off the film itself. I don't know how the Broadway play is. But just on this film in isolation, I feel like a few of the musical numbers go on for too long. Like there's one where the guy, I can't think of his name, it's like meant to be the hot guy that everyone's falling for at the school. The library or whatever it is, I feel like that dance number went on too long. And there's like one or two others. But aside from those, the music actually is quite good in this. I mean, I just really think it does what all musicals are supposed to do, and it does it to perfection, where it moves the plot forward and it's actually advancing the story in a meaningful way without feeling like it's stalling, without feeling like we're getting invested in a story and then it just breaks to a song. It's actually furthering the plot, which I really appreciate. There are a couple issues that I have with this film. One of it is Glinda's backstory. I feel like they really should have fleshed her character out better. Like, for me, the Wicked Witch, or Elphaba, you see her from a child growing up, you understand things in life that are leading her to become this Wicked Witch of the West. But with Glinda, we don't understand, like, it's hinted at that she's pretty spoiled growing up, probably came from a rich family or whatever, but we don't really know a lot about her. And her personality, you know, as a child, really what got her to this moment. So it just feels a little uneven that we're focusing more on Elphaba, even though, yes, she is more or less the actual main character of the story, but really Glinda's right there complimenting her, and I feel like we should have gotten a little more in that area. And then I can safely say, moving on to another negative I had, I was never bored watching this film. Like, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Time flew by. I really was invested the whole way through, but there were definitely about 15 minutes of that movie that I feel could have really been shaved off to make this film a bit tighter in certain spots. Like, again, it's not boring, it's not like it's tedious to watch at any point, but there's definitely moments where I feel like they could have tightened that pace up just a little bit. All that to say, though, by the time we get to the incredible final sequence of this movie, which isn't going to be a spoiler to those that know the play, and I'm not going to spoil any details about it, but the part where the Defying Gravity song comes on is like the final scene, and when that song just belted across the speakers, let me just say, as somebody that, again, didn't know anything about Wicked going in, I understand the hype. I understand why people love this play, and I am so excited. Despite not knowing really anything of the source material outside of Wizard of Oz, I'm excited to see where the story goes. I know a couple people that are really into the Broadway play that say that the second part is going to be kind of like a Dune Part 2, where it's going to get darker, it's going to touch on even more like philosophical themes. So I'm very excited to check it out when it comes out next year. But yeah, just as it stands now, I found this to be a really, really well done film. One of probably my favorite musicals of all time already, and I would honestly go see this movie again in theaters. I've been really busy lately, hence this late review. But, so I don't know if it'll actually happen, but I mean, I would definitely rewatch this film at minimum when it hits streaming services. I'm trying to think what it's going to come out on. Probably Peacock, because it's Universal. So yeah, I'm definitely going to watch it again. I thoroughly enjoyed it. One of my favorite films of the year. I'm going to probably give it an 8.5 out of 10. Just a few setbacks, a few things I wish they had done better, tightening up the pace, giving us a little more characterization to Glinda. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I definitely can understand the hype for it. And if you're on the fence about going to see it, even if you don't like musicals, like I said, I'm not the biggest musical fan myself, but there are a few that I like. So I would say still give it a watch, or at least watch it when it's going to come out on Peacock or whatever. And of course, you know, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Sat down, it's time to talk about Gladiator 2, and this is... yeah, you know, we're not doing this. Forget about it. So, we're going to talk about Gladiator 2, with or without a helmet. And I gotta say, I didn't like this movie as much as Wicked. I definitely think Wicked won the Glicked debate, so if that's what you're here for, there you go. I think Wicked's the better film. And obviously, between the two Gladiator movies, I think the first Gladiator is far superior. But that said, Gladiator 2 is a fantastic entry. It really is. It isn't, again, it's not a masterpiece. There's things that I'm going to mention in this review, obviously, that are negatives that I wish they could have done better. But it definitely complements the first Gladiator film very well. And I know the internet is like very divided on this movie, but quick point of reference, I saw the first Gladiator movie a few weeks ago with a buddy of mine for the very first time. So yeah, it's a masterpiece of a film, but I don't have that nostalgia towards it that a lot of other people do. So I'm going into this with like 3-week-old knowledge of either of these films. And yeah, I think it's a strong sequel. Paul Mescal, he's obviously not a Russell Crowe, and I feel like the people that are really bashing him as the lead character are kind of being a bit unfair because he's not bad at all. He's just not Russell Crowe. And for me, he does a great job, and he gives a really rousing performance as Lucius, who, obviously, if you didn't know, is the kid from the first movie whose uncle was the Joaquin Phoenix character that I'm blanking on the name for. And no, this is not a spoiler because that was literally like common knowledge before I think the first trailer even dropped. And, you know, again, he just does a good job of carrying on Crowe's legacy effectively, even if he never surpasses it. And then you got Pedro Pascal, who plays the character of Marcus Acacius. I think that's how you say it. Again, really fun performance. It's definitely a Pedro role that they give him. Like, it's not feeling like he's really swinging for the fences and playing an entirely new character, but he still gives it his all. It's still a really good performance, and again, he has some really cool fight scenes in this movie, which obviously so does Paul Mescal, that I'll get into here in a bit. And then you got Denzel Washington, who has been heavily praised. That's the best part of this film, playing Macrinus, I believe, and apparently he's supposed to be this historical figure, like in actual history, but he's not extremely accurate to it. All that to say, I actually really enjoyed his performance. He's probably my favorite performer in this film for sure. I don't know if it's quite like, I've heard a couple people I think say he's even like giving an Oscar-worthy performance. I don't think it's anywhere near that, but that said, I do think that it's a very strong performance, and it's just it manages to be both kind of charismatic, but also kind of edgy, and I don't really know what the word is, I guess I'm looking for, but kind of conflicted, you could say. Like, you really feel like there's two sides of him. I guess that's a good way to put it. So again, very fun performances across the board. And yeah, moving on to that, I think the criticisms that I've heard a lot of early reviewers say, that this is basically just a greatest hits replay of the first Gladiator, I think that's a bit unfair in my opinion. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's definitely things that hint towards, like, there's definitely plot elements that are kind of reminiscent of the first Gladiator. But to give you some context, I felt like Star Wars The Force Awakens was significantly more of a rehash of A New Hope than this is to the first Gladiator. I mean, yes, he loses a loved one in the beginning of the film, but it's done in a way that's different enough to where it doesn't feel like it's retreading it. It feels like it's really forming its own path. Like, I see where people are coming from with this, but again, when they do kind of, I'd say, borrow a couple elements from the first Gladiator, they do it different enough to where it doesn't feel like it's just going to be completely rehashing the same, where you feel like you're watching the same movie, or they're just doing again a greatest hits of the first film. It doesn't feel like that at all in my opinion, and others are going to disagree, and that's fine. But you know, just to give you my perspective again from somebody that literally saw the first Gladiator a few weeks ago, it felt so much more than that. And as you get into the third act, it really does go on its own, like, epic direction. There's this grandiose feel to it, and honestly, I think the third act might be my favorite. I think I like the third act of this movie just as much as I like the third act of the first Gladiator. Like, it's close, and maybe the first Gladiator would slightly edge it out, but still, it's just really great. And I think even if you do feel like they're rehashing certain elements of the first film, by the time you get that third act, it's really going to form its own path. It's really tying together this duology of films in a very cohesive and meaningful way. There is some shoddy CGI in some of the action scenes, like there's stuff with baboons and a couple other moments that I was like, yikes, they could have done a lot better, especially since this has like apparently a $300+ million budget. Like, it's absolutely insane. But that said, as a whole, the action and the gladiator sequences in this movie, they're really thrilling, they're inventive, they find a way to, again, keep it fresh, keep it unique, give us something that we didn't see before. Again, there's like a sequence with baboons, and there's another sequence where, yes, it's a little dumb, but I had a friend of mine tell me they actually did this in gladiator matches, so I have no idea, where like the floor opens up, or they fill it with water, they put sharks in it, and so it's basically like this ocean sequence where there's these ships, and they're all on a ship having to like avoid falling in the ocean with these sharks. And it's just, again, a little weird and kind of far-fetched, but it's also thoroughly entertaining to watch. So as a whole, I would actually say the action in Gladiator 2 I prefer over Gladiator 1. In terms of action, not as a film, but in terms of action, I think Gladiator 2 would actually give the slight edge to. Again, it excels in its creativity, its brutality, the fight choreography is excellent. Going on, I guess, to the callbacks to the original film, there's definitely some, but they're never used solely as nostalgia bait. They're used to further advance the story in a meaningful and coherent way, which I really appreciate. The political intrigue, the rousing speeches, the dedication to Roman history and mythology are here. And you really get in a lot of things exactly what you liked in the first Gladiator movie. You'll see it here. And again, some elements like the action are going to be amplified. But I think the one thing that's really missing, despite, again, the speeches, the action, the cast, all of that being, really great, in my opinion, the story and the plot itself just isn't quite as strong as before. It has a good story, but there are certain changes in character development that just feel rushed and underdeveloped, and the antagonists of the film, they're just nowhere near as investing as Joaquin Phoenix's character in the first Gladiator film, nor, in my opinion at least, are they quite as memorable. Again, I don't like comparing it to the first Gladiator too often because it is considered one of the greatest films ever made, and it's such an iconic piece of cinema. But it is worth pointing out that if you're going in expecting a story or a revenge plot, whatever you want to call it, as engaging as the first Gladiator, you're not going to find that here. But that said, Ridley Scott, this is another film where he's proven that despite him being in his 80s or late 70s, he's older than the majority of directors working in Hollywood, but this man still got it. This man can still churn out a crowd pleaser and just direct it with such gusto and put in such time, effort, and energy into a sequel than the majority of other directors working in Hollywood that are a third of his age. It doesn't surpass the original in my opinion, but if you're looking for a really strong sword and sandals movie that we don't get a lot anymore, that really also serves as a nice epilogue to one of America's most iconic franchises, I do think you're going to enjoy this film for sure. Overall, I think when I did my Letterboxd review, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I might go down to a 7.5 out of 10. Not that any opinions or anything changed, just I don't think this movie is quite high enough to get an 8, but it's still a very strong movie, still a lot of fun. Again, the action's incredible, the cast is great, you get the speeches and the political intrigue. It's just, I don't think the story is quite as engaging, which does for me, who is a big story guy. I love deep themes and really rich storytelling that I got in the first Gladiator. When it's not here, it does bring it down just a tad. So I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10. Still really great film. Definitely recommend you go watch it. But obviously, if you only got enough money to see one film on this Glicked frenzy that we're on, I would say definitely use your ticket and go see Wicked. It's worth the hard-earned money. So is Gladiator, don't get me wrong, but Wicked is just on a whole nother level in my opinion. So anyways, guys, that's all I got for today. Let me know in the comments down below. Did you see Wicked, Gladiator, both, neither yet? Just, let me know and let's start a friendly discussion in the comments. And again, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all later. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. If you liked what you've seen here and you want to see more, please feel free to like, subscribe, share, and check out my other videos in the link in the description down below, and I will see you all later.